allow someone to tell them what they need to know versus going and doing their own research. It's different.
But lady, we have for years told people the truth. And what I find so frustrating is that you see them in another room or another conversation and they would regurgitate the exact false point, that you would correct it and provide evidence, a source to back up whatever your and they
No, we lost him. Internet broke. No, we lost him now. He sounded like he's going to a tunnel.
Yeah,
we kind of lost Patty too.
Yeah, I'm in a bad zone. Right.
Oh, there you go.
Okay, so yeah, I was saying that one thing that's so frustrating is that you meet certain people on this app and you have a conversation with them. You refute what they say, and you provide sources to back up whatever premise you. But then you sit in another room and you regurgitate the same shit that you would push back on, that you would debunk before. Like, apparently, they didn't learn anything new. That's, I find, to be the most infuriating part of having conversations with MAGA.
I think that's because you assume that they want to learn.
That's a good point. But what's preventing them from actually consuming new information?
They don't want new information. That's how demagoguery and ideologues work. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what you say. It doesn't matter how much proof you have. It was just like we were listening to something. I don't know if it was last night or this morning. And the guy said to the woman, he's like, I'm going to give you this data and these facts. And she said, I won't believe you.
Wow.
What do you do with that?
Wow.
What do you do with that? There are some of these people for whom spreading the idea is more important than understanding the implications of the idea or gaining information that makes the idea. You just have some ideologues. They stuck for whatever.
And I just want to say this because I have a client that I just spoke to who screwed herself by asking ChatGPT for advice. I'm like, no, for legal advice. Now I have to clean it all up, and it's gonna take me a lot longer. Like, it's so hard to fucking undo a mess, right? I think a lot of people are relying on ChatGPT as accurate, and it's not accurate all the time. And please don't use it for legal advice. Oh my God, I'm so annoyed.
Man, that's wild. Yeah, the AI is hallucinated. It's a common occurrence, and yeah, people should know that. And yeah, exactly. Don't take advice. But ChatGPT told me I should spend more time on Clubhouse, so that's why I'm here.
But you guys saw this week there's a judge who censured a lawyer for using ChatGPT and submitting a docket with case law that doesn't exist or a precedent that doesn't exist.
Yeah, that's happened.
Made that shit up.
That's happened multiple times. Our lawyers have used ChatGPT and it cites case law that doesn't exist.
It happened to one of Trump's lawyers. They caught it in one of his cases.
Yes.
I mean, it's the same thing. It's the same thing as like Wikipedia. Like you use that as a jumping off point for research. You don't use it as the end.
Yeah, especially people don't come out provide a source.
source on Clubhouse for me is Dr. AG. I'll say, Dr. AG said.
And you are a wise woman, saying.
Because she's an encyclopedia and dictionary.
And now I'm an archive.
It just keeps growing. Hey, Clint, what you doing, Clint? Why you down there, Clint? Where you at, Clint?
That shit funny. You know what's real sad? Is you
We listen and we don't judge. I got kids by my uncle. All three of his, and my baby daddy think the kids is his.
You see that video I sent you, Clint? It was hours ago. No, I'm really.
The sword, but able to encourage people to follow that. Like, that's not what we're seeing in these, communities and others in the world.
I guess what I was referring to is people who I know.
Legal advice.
There is no incentive for them to just say free Palestine on their fucking head.
What she's standing up for is for speed.
Now that they're getting them there.
I love it. Thank you, sis.
Smash, Marry, Kill. Hey,
How much do you guys pay for rent in Chicago?
We actually rented, we own it. With the HOA, we pay around $2,700.
Can I tour your guys' apartment?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Welcome to my vintage apartment, built in 1920 by a female architect, Emma Kenneth. This is my hallway, this is my entryway. I wanted to always be like cozy and warm, so I have this bench, like decorative coffee books. That's a vintage art that I got from a vintage store. Beautiful art piece that represents my country. Welcome to the living room where me and my fiance and my little dog hang out a lot.
I think that the idea of tenure should get thrown out of the fucking window. I think that if you're a bad teacher, it should be easier to fire. The fact that you're responsible for the education of the youth of this country, and you got a job that it's one of the hardest to fire you, it's backwards. We should make it very easy to fire teachers.
No, I completely agree that we should make it easier to fire teachers, because I don't, in my opinion, I don't think your issue is necessarily that they're overpaid. I think their issue is that they're getting paid something that would be considered overpaid for people that don't have the skill set of what it should be to be an effective teacher. Because I feel like the majority of those competent teachers left after the pay, and when the kids started getting way fucking crazy, just like, yeah, I'm not getting paid enough to do this shit, and then they dipped out, and that was it. Those are the good teachers that we had, that got pushed their fucking point after I don't know how long doing it, and then we had to get some shitty fucking replacements of just anybody we could find to make sure there's an adult in that classroom in some way, shape, or form, and then. Yeah, it seems like they're being overpaid for the work that gets put out, because everybody fucking left because of the pay, and now when we have the shit scrabblers that are there to work for I don't know what, unless you get like a fucking, you know, a diamond in the rough like myself, and then you get someone who actually gives a shit about wanting to teach the kids and set them up for the future, right? You get half the people that are there just because they need some cash for part-time or want to be a substitute fucking teacher and then accidentally end up staying in the classroom. So I don't think it's all completely on the teacher, especially when you have some parents that, as much as the teacher does teach well, as much as the teacher does do things in the classroom, as much as he does try to keep shit engaged, they don't discipline their fucking kids. Their kids don't pay attention in class. They're super fucking disrespectful. When they get back home, they act out that same fucking disrespect they give to me to their parents. Those same parents don't do shit but kneel and bow the knee to their fucking child like they run the household and not them. So a lot of the time, well, I will say it's not like teachers have no fault in this whatsoever, because I completely agree. There's some of my coworkers that I don't think should be fucking teachers because they teach like shit, and I wouldn't want to be in that classroom. But at the same time, it's not like I can't also understand, like, hey, their classroom might be shitty, but you can't be a good fucking parent either. It goes on both ends. It starts at home and ends in the school. Both have responsibility.
Yeah, there's other problems with the education system. The fact that we have compulsory education, and in some states you refuse to allow parents to send their kids, direct their tax dollars to allow somebody to escape these failing schools and to be able to use those funds more wisely to put kids in an education modality that might be better suited to their kid. I'm a big believer in educational freedom. I think that you should, as a parent, be able to direct those tax dollars in any way you seem fit to be able to deal with the education of your kids. But there's many people that disagree with this. What they prefer is that you trap people into failing schools. And you make it compulsory that the parent must send their kid to this failing school. And by the way, if you don't send your kid to the failing school, you can actually go to jail because education is compulsory. And so this is the craziness that we have in this country, where you know we understand that the importance of education is going to impact our future. Yet we allow our system to be erected in such a way that we almost guarantee that the system is going to fail. The higher education works really, really well. I think we still do a good job of educating people. But when the federal government got involved in that, the cost went up. You started paying for backing the loans. And when the government backs the loans for higher education, the lenders can give the money to anybody, doesn't matter what their credit risk is, and if the person defaults on that loan, it doesn't matter, the lender's going to get it because the taxpayers are going to foot the bill. If I had my way, I would, the same way that you guys want to separate church and state, I would want to separate the market and state. I don't believe that the way that we allow allow government to interfere and put their hand on the scale of the market make sense at all. To interfere and put their hand on the scale of the market makes sense at all. In fact, I would completely privatize education if it were left up to me. The only thing that I think that the government should be spending taxpayer dollars on is to fund the military, fund police, and to fund courts. That's the extent of the government that I think we should pay for at the federal.
And I guess in terms of, I guess what I'm gathering from hearing you speak, because I've heard you speak a bit, but not like a ton, but I guess you're not necessarily looking for equality or even equity. You are more so looking for maximalization of profit and the freedom of a market to do that of its own, like however it wants to do it.
Well, first of all, that's a good catch. I don't believe in equality. I think it's an illusion. Milton Friedman said that if you put equality in front of liberty, you get neither. But if you put liberty in front of equality, you get heapings of both. I think he's right about that. I think we should recognize that people are not equal. The knowledge, skill, and ability of the people on this stage are all very different. And I think we should factor that in. The only thing that we should be focused on when it comes to being equal is equal protection under the law. And I think when people are fighting for equality of outcomes or even equality of opportunity, they're actually disregarding and fighting against the notion of equal protection under the law. Fundamentally, I believe that the best system that we could have is one where you're free to succeed or to fail. The one thing I would disagree with is you said that the focus should be on profits. That's the goal for business owners, is to be profitable. But my concern is more on the freedom to allow businesses to fail or succeed. If they're profitable, it's because they ran a good business. If they fail, then so be it. That's part of the process also. I definitely don't think that you should be guaranteed a fucking profit. I think you should have to work for that.
Definitely. And then the last thing, because that gives me a good idea, and it just frames, further future questions. The last thing, when you say, when you talk about how, the separation of state and market, I guess, kind of what comes up in my head is, before we had certain laws, there were things that I think were objectively bad, like having children working in coal mines and that sort of conditions. So I think that I view at least some level of state intervention as necessary. What's your kind of stance on that side?
I think understanding that the harm reduction is what we should be aiming for. Some child labor laws are written ridiculously. While I don't think kids should work at a coal mine, you have to think about, at a time, my grandfather who raised me worked at a coal mine when he was a child in the state of Colorado. And the economic conditions were such where he and his brothers needed to find employment. They quit school to go find employment. The only place that was hiring was the coal mine. And so when the alternative is that you starve or the kids go find a way to make money, I would love to see a world in which kids don't have to do that. But what we've done is, in this overzealous, we can't have children working, we're now preventing somebody that, let's say, owns a floral shop from teaching their kid the family business, for example. And I don't think that there's a harm in letting a child learn how to trim flowers, for example. And so I think there's different labor that you could put kids at. I certainly am not an advocate for children, going into diamond mines. I'm not a supporter of that. But I also think that blaming the state for the lack of regulation is not really addressing the problem in the first place. the first thing that I would look to is where were the parents that allowed their kid to go and work in the coal mine, and what were the parents doing? And then if their circumstances was so dire that working in the coal mine was actually going to improve the quality of their life, I think it would be immoral for the government to intervene in that.
I'd like to hear your position on power, away from the capital, the money, paychecks. What forces are in play that gives the powerful, say, a business owner, to make 400 times what his employee makes with let's say their staff is 10,000. How does that make sense that people just bow down like that?
Well, why would we ever want to put a cap on what somebody?
In comparison to what they pay
I
someone?
mean, I can answer that, because when that's kind of the inherent issue is when you have one person or this very small group of people. And I'm not talking about small businesses, of course, but if you have a huge corporation, and the CEO is able to basically give themselves kind of whatever, and they're the business is successful. There's nothing stopping them from more equitably sharing those profits that business has made. I think in that sense, it's not that I'm advocating for a cap on what they can make. I'm more so advocating for a cap in the ratio, because the argument that people make is okay, if you're a CEO, you've got all this expertise, you know what it takes to run the business. I totally agree. People have no idea what goes into run, especially a really, really big company. So I'm with that, but is one person working 4,000? Are they 4,000 times working that much harder? 10,000 times harder? I mean, there should be some sort of
Well, if somebody builds a business that allows them to hire employees, and employment is a two-way street. I put out a job rec, you apply to it, you come and interview for it. Typically, you'll comb your hair nice, you'll shave, and you'll put on your Sunday best, and you'll say, I want this job, knowing what the pay is. Nobody's asking you to work for nothing. In fact, they're not grabbing people with a net off the street to come work for them. People are coming to that business and saying, that job that you need done and the pay that you offer, I would like that. And so that's a contract. And so when the employees are applying for those jobs, and the prices are set based on the value of the work that gets done. And again, that value is not based on how much profit the business makes. It's based on how easily replaceable you are. If the job, if you're a warehouse a worker, or you're a driver, it's not to say that the work that you're doing isn't physically demanding. It just means that there's a lot of people that could do physically demanding work, or that they could drive the vehicle. All they need is a clean driving record, and we can get them to do that. If you can use GPS and you can unload the truck, and you're physically capable of doing that, there is a lot of people that can do that. And just the fact that you have the job doesn't mean that you're entitled to the money that the company makes. Where I think that we would find some common ground, and I think a better thing to look at is the role that government plays in these businesses. What you guys are asking for, it seems like, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, is some sort of regulation. You talk about ratios between C-level pay and the worker bee pay. I would rather have the government out of that, and I would also like the government to not provide subsidies to these businesses. I would also like to make sure that the taxpayer dollars are not going to bail out failed companies, especially in the banking sector, where when the bank is failing, we do a wealth transfer from the taxpayers to the banks, because the banks were in quote-unquote crisis, and then the money that was given to them by the taxpayers, they then use to pay bonuses to the executives. There's definitely some obscene things that go on in corporations. There's no doubt about it. But from my vantage point, all of those obscenities that we see come from the fact that the government has an unhealthy relationship in the business sector. They create regulatory agencies that provide favor to specific companies within certain industries. They deem that some companies are too important to fail. And they invest in them in the beginning, they invest in them in the middle, and even if the business fails, they give them more money. I think all of that should stop. I don't believe that the government should be giving these handouts. What we have today is exactly what Benito Mussolini envisioned in Italy. The idea of corporatism, the unity of government and corporations. So I think that I have a lot of smoke for corporations. I just point it in a different direction. The solution that it seems like you guys are asking for is for the government to get more involved. I'm suggesting that the government should not be.
That's actually pretty interesting because one of my core issues with capitalism is I've talked to a few people about this, and I don't think I've seen anyone really give me an example or breakdown of how it doesn't lead to corporatism, because naturally what's going to happen is certain companies will outperform others. I'm totally in agreement. We're not equal. Some people are going to do better. That's just a fact. Which isn't a problem. But then what ends up happening is, once you get to a certain size, then you can start doing things like, buying out the competition, or if it's really that dirty of a game, you can kill off the competition, or you can buy politicians. And I think that the reason that we have this deep, because I agree. I mean, honestly, a lot of what you said, I don't fundamentally I don't think anything you said is false. I think we're seeing it different ways, but I agree. There's too much of that, but I think that's intentional. It's as a result of these corporations and kind of super PACs, all that sort of thing. You get these very large sums of money between very few people, and then they use that money to influence the government and actually effectively give both the government and by extension themselves more power. So how do you have a capitalist system that doesn't lead to?
I think it's very simple. The distinction of a corporation doesn't even need to be made. In my opinion, having a corporation is a recognized government distinction. If we just got, you don't need to be a corporation to be a company. And then when you structure as a corporation, you now have different government protections. I don't want the companies to be protected by the government. The only thing I want them to be protected from is overregulation. When I look at the biggest expansion in the U.S. economy, it was a time when regulation was very non-existent. From 1870 to 1900, you saw the Industrial Revolution. We came out of, we had slavery, then we go through Reconstruction, and then all of a sudden we deregulate the market, and economic expansion is better than it's been in the entirety of human history in a 30-year period. And then the response to that was that we saw, some companies made a lot of money. That made certain people very rich. Maybe we should put some regulations. And again, I'm going to be that guy. If you think about some people that want total control of the market, and then there's somebody like myself that's saying very, very little, right? I'm a minimalist. I can make the argument for no interference at all. And there's going to be a meeting in the middle. I think what's happened is we've allowed the people that have scared people that these corporations are evil. And I don't think the corporations are fundamentally evil. I think it's the collusion between government and corporations that creates this problem. I cannot, for the life of me, and I challenge you guys, find one company in the entire history of the United States that became a monopoly in their industry without the assist of the government, without a subsidy or without regulatory favor or without some sort of infusion of cash or government contracts. Show me a company that became a monopoly that got there without the government's help. And that's the problem. You don't see organic monopolies because when the government stays out of it, we do have competition. And when we have competition, what we see is more efficiency, what we see is lower cost, and what we see is innovation. We see everything moves in the positive direction when we increase competition. And if you want to increase competition, you have to deregulate them.
That's definitely an interesting point. I think I'm gonna have to look into that and see, because I definitely get what you're saying, and I can think of some examples as well. And really, I'm forgetting now, because I remember what was it, Ford versus Dodge, that like kind of led to it was like one of the foundational, I guess, legal outcomes that kind of led to the shareholder obligation thing. And I feel like, if I remember, there was even like interference in that whole thing, like where the government kind of effectively helped them in that sense. But anyway, no, that definitely makes sense. I think that is one of the issues, is the capitalism leading to corporatism, and I think that's the point that you've made. I can't really refute because I don't know, without looking that up, I have to do some diving. But there's also the extraction. The other thing I wanted to touch on, and I think it was this MGK that was saying like, oh, okay, they do, bring 4,000 or 40,000 times more or whatever. I think this is where I guess me and the right fundamentally diverge, is because I don't think that that's possible. I do think that a person can probably, be 10 times better or 20 or maybe even 30 times. It can be some obscene number. Like if I was to play against LeBron James and you were to quantify how much better he is than me, I'm sure he's fucking 30, 40, 50 times better than me at fucking basketball. But could LeBron James beat 4,000 of me at basketball? Like, no, I don't give a fuck. He's fucking LeBron James, bro. Like, there's 4,000. My point is, there gets to be a point where it's unrealistic to say that, just any ratio possible is quote unquote fair. Because in order for that person to generate that much, even if they're doing everything right, even if they're a fucking great CEO and they're handling shit and they're a fucking genius, in order for that business to run, they are still utilizing the labor of other people. And I get what you're saying.
Dwight, here's the issue, right? If the government stayed out of this, imagine the government stayed out of this. And imagine, let's say, a big company, like, let's say an Amazon or a Google or just a big company, right? If a company was not paying their employees enough, right? In a truly free market where we don't overregulate, if one company was just crushing it, the employees could go to work for a competitor. And if a competitor was, let's say, in second place, let's say there's a market where there's 4 players, right? Let's say there's 4 major players that could do a particular product or service. Right? Like, they could realistically hit scale and do this. Let's say there's 4 players. If one was kicking everybody's ass but was abusing their employees by not having the right work conditions, not paying them well enough, and the employees were upset about this, their competitors could go and find the most talented people amongst those employees and recruit them and pay them more and give them better benefits and better conditions. And by having the better people, you would innovate faster, you would make better products, you would be able to increase the pay is so out of whack with the employee, who do you think would make the most sense to have dominion over that company to say, moving forward, this is the cap? Who would you give the power to make those decisions? And where do they get the knowledge that they can intervene and make a decision on where that cap?
Yeah, I think that could be something. And of course, where we also differ is I'm obviously pro government involvement to an extent, although not to the extent it is now. Yeah, you have laws and regulations in place where maybe it's a range. Maybe for a smaller business, the ratio is like 9 to 1, or maybe if you have a business with 100,000 employees, maybe it's 100 to 1 or something like that. That we can have we have economists, we have people that are way smarter than anybody in this room probably, that know all kinds of shit that can be utilized to help inform these decisions so that the collective can make an informed decision.
So Dwight, why do you think it's important to compare the pay of these distinctly different jobs? Why do you think that's important?
What do you mean by that? Like different?
So let's talk Amazon, right? Well, just to give an example, you have Jeff Bezos has a lot of money. Amazon does a ton of different things. Started off very innocently enough as a online bookstore, for those that remember, and now they provide web services. They're hyperscaler that businesses build upon. And then they also have Prime Video. They also have a delivery service. Small business owners can use their platform to sell their products. Amazon also sells their own garbage. They do a lot of things. Which worker at Amazon do you think deserves a salary that is 1/9 of Jeff Bezos?
Like during the early times or now?
Yeah. Do you think that there's that warehouse work at Amazon should be more highly compensated than warehouse work, let's say at some wholesale glass manufacturer for automobiles?
Well, yeah. If the company is worth a certain amount, like I don't see a reason why you couldn't have it where there's and maybe for this example we go with what you suggest, which is no minimum wage. But let's say even if let's say there's a minimum amount that you have to pay people because whatever regulation or law, whatever. Okay, if you're at Amazon and the company is worth XYZ amount, well, the amount that the workers are able to be compensated can be scaled. And there's a lot of different ways you can achieve that. It doesn't necessarily have to be like a ratio of worker to CEO. It could be something like.
Dwight, what about the incentive structure for the employees? If you got a job, let's say as an entry-level warehouse worker in an Amazon warehouse, rather than soliciting that the government get involved and even out these ratios and take some of Bezos' pay and give it to the warehouse workers, what about the obtaining new skills and working in that warehouse? You go from lifting boxes to getting certified to drive the forklift, which is going to get you an increase in pay. You stick around, you get your cost of living adjustment. Maybe you're such a hard worker that they recognize you and they make you a shift supervisor. Eventually, you might even be managing the entire warehouse. I would recommend that any worker always look at how do I increase my value to the company I'm working for, or improve my knowledge, skills, and ability to make myself more marketable to another company that might pay me better, rather than thinking, I don't think I make enough money, it's unfair that that guy has money, maybe if the government got involved, I would have it better off. I think that you have far more control, and it's a much better system where you create incentives where the person that builds the best mousetrap and markets the mousetrap the best and sells the most of the mousetraps makes the most money, and the people that are helping them to manufacture it, to sell it, to distribute it, all of those things, they're going to get paid accordingly for the knowledge, skills, and ability they have. And so the incentive that you have is to just obtain the most marketable skills, the skills that pay the best.
Yeah, that was
If you want to make Jeff Bezos money, then what I would suggest is that you go and innovate something and start a business and scale it the way that Jeff Bezos.
Yeah, no, that would still apply. Like your pay would be based on your value to the company. So it just wouldn't be such a vast difference where you can have, one or two people taking such a high percentage of so many people's labor, paying them.
Why do you care?
Because to me, that would make more sense as far as one, an equitable society, two.
But hold on, who said an equitable society is fair? The whole notion of equality is unfair. If you want people to be treated equal, in order to do that, you have to put your hand on the scale. How is that fair to the business owner?
Right, and that's why I said equitable, not equal. Because I agree. Like equality is just not achievable. I don't think even if we want to like.
Really quickly, I want to ask you, actually I'm not even going to ask a question, I'm just going to make a statement. Oftentimes I hear the arguments similar to yours coming from, like, I think it's a good place, but it's possibly misinformed by the idea that, there is like a pie out there that is the money that can be divided up between people, and the more the haves can somehow gain, the less the have-nots have access to. But it's not the case. It's just not the case at all. The pie can be made larger and larger, and oftentimes, not always, but oftentimes, the compensation you're talking about, and that, like, you're skeptical of, which again, I understand if you're looking at it as a fixed, amount of resources. But what you have is a Jeff Bezos type who actually makes the pie so much bigger. And if under those circumstances, I'm just curious, but again, I'm not going to ask if that would change the way that you see this at all. Like, perceiving that income as a resource is not limited to one pool that can never grow or shrink. It's actually quite the opposite. Shrinking would be devastating, and so having these decisions in the wrong hands would have some really terrible outcomes. You're already skeptical of government interference in the way that impacts our markets and how these corporations operate. So I'm just curious, thinking about that pie shrinking, since it is not fixed, and knowing that government influence can have negative impacts on why you would want more, because you've already agreed that yes, you appreciate regulation, but you don't like some of the outcomes of it, and see if in fact a Jeff Bezos type or someone in a position like that can actually make the pie much bigger, so that there is actually more pie to go around. How it shifts your calculus. Again, you don't have to answer it. It's more of like a thought experiment.
Yeah, I
feel like you're coming from a fixed pie place.
I definitely don't view it as fixed, and in fact, so basically, like if the Federal Reserve, right, wants to increase the amount of money in circulation, they do. I forget the exact product. Like this is stuff like I am familiar with, but I don't.
Hold on. So we're talking.
Familiar enough with it.
But hold on, just a second. Hold on. Before you start doing this, like, I don't want you to bring the Federal Reserve into it, because we're talking about, like, if we just keep using Jeff Bezos, we're talking about an individual who innovates into a market which was pressure's right. It was book selling, and I remember being so excited because I was able to spend much less on books in college at the time. Anyway, we're talking about someone who is actually providing a good or service that people need, and that's what needs the income that can eventually go around as it is today. We're not talking about printing money.
Well, what I'm saying is, when the pie expands, because you're talking about like production, but yeah, when the pie expands, both in terms of printing money and in terms of production, it still doesn't
banned
affordable now.
from the room.
Like even when you account for inflation, things are less affordable
I don't know, I
now
can't get in there, I'm blocked.
for the typical person than say X number of years ago. So
This isn't true.
I mean,
Businesses as opposed to having one business does not make it does not explain. It doesn't do what you're saying.
Text about a few months after the
typical person's like the median income today versus the median cost per house.
I understand, but you're discussing something different, which is not what okay. So if you don't think that there is just one big pie out there, and that if Jeff Bezos takes $4 billion and he should have only taken one, that $3 billion have been taken out of the pockets of everybody else, and you think that pie isn't fixed, it can grow, it can shrink, etc. You don't need to go into inflation. You don't need to go into economic dynamics to.
Well, I get what you're saying. Oh, is he cut out? I can't. I don't know if y'all can hear. I can't hear.
We can hear you.
Oh, okay. I didn't know if Kelly was done because it sounded like
The conversation does not need to change. We don't need to start talking about the Fed. We don't need to start talking about inflation. We could, but I wasn't trying to bring in more topics. I was just suggesting that people who appreciate that there is a fixed pie look at this differently than people who appreciate that can either grow or can shrink.
Right. No, I agree on that. I wasn't trying to necessarily go off on a tangent. I was just saying I agree with you on that point. I'm just saying when the pie grows, and even in the way that you're discussing, it still is the same thing. It still is basically just disproportionately benefiting the few as opposed to the many. Because that's I think one of the arguments. Because that would be my assumption about when making that argument. It's well, they provide all this value to society because they're actually increasing the size of the pie. And it's okay, yeah, that's cool and all, but if the increase in the pie is just disproportionately benefiting the few, then I don't see how that's explained.
Let me explain it in a different way. So, when you say that you want to change the way that these ratios are allocated, if you were to do that, because you have to think about there's top line revenue, there's bottom line revenue, right? And if you were to take, and let's say we did what you recommended, which is the ratio could only be 9 to 1. You have to look at, and this is why employees should never make these calls, and government should absolutely not make these calls, is that you don't have the visibility into where that money would have been allocated otherwise. Under the current system, they allocate money towards research and development of new products to optimize and reduce the expense for the current products that they sell, to make the company even more profitable, and to be able to expand the business, which creates more jobs, which actually benefits the economy. By creating jobs, they're doing their part. When you make this demand, you're essentially going to impact the business in a way that makes it less competitive, because they now have to spend the money on higher labor costs, so they're not going to have the same R&D. They're not going to be able to innovate in the same way that they would otherwise by allocating these dollars. And so I think the fact that if the business is running with the cost of labor that they have, the only time I think that you would have a reasonable case to increase the labor is if you had really poor morale and the labor was ineffective. Then maybe you could say, hey, we need to look at the conditions in which they work in. Maybe we need to hire a higher caliber employee. All of those types of things, and labor costs could go up if labor is the issue. But if they're making all this money with the labor that they have, labor is not the problem. And I think what's selfish is the idea of, hey, we should take more took from the guy at the top to distribute to these people, despite knowing that by doing that, you reduce the chance of creating more jobs for other people. And so this is why I would always leave the decision making in the hands of the creator.
I'll jump in here real quick if that's all right. Yeah, I wanted to give some pushback to the idea of the LeBron James analogy and the other quotes referred to the CEO. And I'm going to just look the word 1,000 times guy. But here's the thing: when it comes to the LeBron analogy, which playing even one-on-one, the issue is that he's capped by a body, right? And same thing when it comes to employees and physical labor. They're capped by the physical labor massive, multi national organizations, right? So it's kind of unfair to how can I put it? Compare how much a CEO is making to an employee when the reason why they're getting paid are very different reasons. And it's like, look, maybe it's not that the CEO is doing 4 times the labor, but just the fact that their decisions sort of affect thousands of employees. The millions.
Well, it's bigger than that, and I just want to insert this, and please continue. I would make the argument that Jeff Bezos is 1.5 million times more valuable than each one of his employees because he has created jobs for 1.5 million people, whereas the people that are working for them, for him, have created no jobs. And so the mere fact that he's employed 1.5 million people, yes, he's absolutely worth more money than any of the people that work.
I totally agree. When you think about a business, it's sort of like the centralization of value. You're giving value to the customer, to the employees that you're hiring. Maybe you're giving them benefits, a way to feed their family. You're giving value to the shareholder, and you're giving value so much to the point that it's the value that you're giving and people wanting that value over their own dollars is what creates the large sum of money that CEOs get paid. So it's sort of like they get paid so much because they provide so much value, and then the second they stop providing that value, then we get to put it somewhere else. So I think in that sense, it's sort of like, and this is why I said fair in chat before, which is like, look, this seems like if everybody is sort of like someone describing increasing the slice of the pie so more people can get the slice of the pie, and theirs is bigger despite everyone still getting a slice of the pie, and everyone agreed to the rules that they're in, right? They're all doing this through voluntary participation. It seems like that seems pretty fair to me, and it's like, look, if everyone agreed to the income that they're making at this job, it's like I feel kind of weird being the person sort of stepping in between someone and sort of getting in between a salary that they agree to with their own volition and things like that. So it seems to me that that it's totally fair that the CEO gets paid more, and I think that it's justified in the value that they provide because it's just their decisions are just affecting a lot more people, billions of capital, whereas an employee, even though look, they're doing their really useful job, right? But it's like the impact of their labor, depending on a job, really, it's sort of it's just not as big as a single decision that a CEO can make that affects billions of capital.
Also, too, like when you look at this, the accountability factor, like which everybody's just not bringing up. I'm gonna go back because I know somebody in my life that really loved Pottery Bar, or not Pottery. It wasn't Pure One Imports, whatever that fucking company.
It wasn't a man. It wasn't a man, baby. Go ahead.
I know. But this person, I really loved me, and I loved her. But she loved Pure One. Pure One went out of business, and the overall issue was that they couldn't compete, they couldn't develop, and everybody was screaming about the jobs. Everybody was upset because this institution was going away. They called it a must save, and they blamed who? The board, the CEO, everybody in leadership. Not one employee took accountability. There was an employee up there going, you know what? I failed Pure One because I couldn't sell enough items. I couldn't keep us in the black. I couldn't keep us moving. You never hear that from employees. And this like delusion of grandeur that you're somehow bigger than the other parts that are needed to run through. Someone has to steer the ship. Someone has to give the commands. And someone has to take the accountability. But it just seems like, and whenever I hear these equity, Jeff Bezos should be making, what was it, 9 times, or the employee should be making, 1/9 of his salary or something like that.
100, and I believe the pushback was 100 times. CEO should be making 100 times the bucks amount there.
You should actually look up what Jeff Bezos' salary is from Amazon. I believe it's like 85,000, 90,000. I think they pay him $1.5 million for security through Amazon to make sure he's not killed or knocked off or somebody buying that.
Yeah, but that's not how he makes money. He makes money through shares.
Yeah, he makes money through his shares. He makes all of it through his investments in building the brands and doing all of that. That creates those jobs, like Roger said, and what Kelly was going to. I never hear the employees on the lower rung, like a Starbucks worker, going, I'm accountable because Starbucks had a bad quarter. It's my fault because I couldn't sell a pumpkin spice latte to some fucking princess driving an SUV. You never hear that. You never, it's really weird to me that workers will never take accountability, but they want all the perks. And they'll never put forth the amount of effort, energy, and have a vision to actually propel it ahead, which is why you'll have 1 in 1,000 rise to the top. They'll become a leader. They'll become a manager, supervisor, director, or whatever. They'll always rise up because those are the ones that are willing to take the accountability, the responsibility, steer it in a direction, and keep pushing and keep driving. Well, the rest I'm going to be honest, a lot of workers are just not there. I would not give $1 billion to a fucking fry cook at McDonald's because the McDonald's CEO makes a fucking fortune. It wouldn't make sense in this world. How you would ever computate that, I don't know.
Well, again, go ahead. I just go back to the question of, there's two fundamental questions. One, why would we want to externally, enforce any type of cap on what somebody can earn? I wouldn't want to put a cap on what the CEO could pay an employee if they choose to, and I don't understand why we would want to institute a cap on the CEO, which, by the way, CEOs don't decide what their own pay is. That's decided by the board anyway. So, yes, they have a big say in it, but you get paid. You negotiate these things. Some people want a $1 salary and they want more equity. He wouldn't be making that much money if he hadn't created the value that he has. One of the biggest things that he's creating is jobs itself. And I think it's interesting that the laborers or the people that don't even work there are the ones that want to give their opinion that somehow he needs to share his money with share more of what he's making with others, when the money that gets allocated for labor is adequate to keep the company going and to innovate and release new products, which creates more jobs, expands into new places. They're a global company that's employing 1.5 million people, and you want to impart your wisdom on how they might do it more fairly. And your idea of fair is that the person that's steered this ship make less money.
Yeah, hello everybody. I just got here.
Well, hold on, before you
oh sure.
Moose, I think I spoke over Moose. Moose, go ahead, and then we'll.
Thanks, Majo. Yeah, right. So I got it. The CEOs, they take the glory and they take the brunt of it. If it's a failure, it's on the CEO, right? They have to answer to the board, holders, and all that. But so like with Brad's example, though, of tier one, when you're saying that, well, where were the employees to help out tier one? I mean, I'm going to guess that the average, let's say 20-something, even college students, single mom, whatever the demographic is that work at the stores, they have absolutely no idea of the magic behind the corporate curtain. Like the average employee not only doesn't have any say in what stores should open or close, they don't even they have no say even on their own schedule. I'm sorry, are you coming off mic? I'm almost done. Sorry, if you can wait till I finish, I'd appreciate it. Thank you. So that's what I'm saying. So it's at the end of the day, you're saying, well, we're the employees that could have saved, Pier 1. Well, what about all the executives and high up managers that made obviously bad decisions about locations of stores, how much commerce to try to do online, product placement, pricing, all that. And they have no say in that whatsoever. They're trying to, I think, at the end of the day, fight for their benefits. Fight for proper overtime, which actually always regulated on the up and up. So I think I hear you. Like, yes, a lot of CEOs deserve the credit for their success. However, I don't know that the employees can really be put. I don't think it's one size fits all. I think generally the way it goes, if morale is in the toilet, it will slowly be reflected on the front line with customer service, right? And then the worse the customer service is, people start going elsewhere. Employees who do feel empowered by their executives, who do feel empowered by the managers on the floor, will again have the reverse op. If that folks will be coming in more. You get that repeat business. It's you have to empower your employees at some point. I'm not saying you have to give them every little thing they want, but come to the table and be fair.
Yeah, so real quick, I just want to insert this, and then I know Steve's got to jump into, and then you can go, Brad. But just real quickly, I agree that if there is an issue with employee morale and productivity, you should do some honest inspecting of what you can do that would improve the morale, the productivity, all of those things. And sometimes pay, sometimes benefits, sometimes it's just the environment, sometimes it's the culture and the way that you treat the employees. There's a lot of things that you could do, and I think good companies do work on that. Some companies, though, have a problem where they've got so many applicants that they have a culture where they'll treat their employees like shit, because if the person quits, they've got 100,000 people that want to take the job. But the reason why you don't want to overcorrect and fix that problem is because you have to remember, if there's a lot of applicants for that job is easy to find people to do. And so I don't advocate for treating those people like shit. In fact, I would advocate for enabling them to feel as good as they can about the job that they have, so they can be as productive as they can for you. But the question still comes down to, who should make that decision? And I wish that this app had a polling feature where we can ask the people in the chat and on the stage, do you think the government should decide these things? Do you think the company should decide these things? Do you think the employees that are in question should decide these things? Or do you think it's a combination of this thing? My answer would be clear on that. But I'd be interested if you guys want to engage in the chat on this, of who you think should make that decision. And I know Steve wants to jump in, and then Brad wants to go, and I'm sure Moose wants to reply to what's being said. So let's go Steve, Brad, and then back.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. Firstly, Starbucks was mentioned briefly on Starbucks. They arguably have a CBA, a collective bargaining agreement. I think their average barista gets $30 an hour, plus PTO, paid time off. They also get benefits up the gazoo, and that's just for pouring coffee, $30 an hour. As far as Jeff Bezos, as we all know, he started the company in his fucking garage with his wife, and as Roger correctly said, he now employs or has over 1.5 million people working for him. So how much should he be entitled to? I agree with Roger that I don't think people should have a limit put on their value. People are paid what they are worth. He employs 1.5 million people. Well, let's cut it down by 90%. Let's give him 150,000% more than you know what? Let's bring it down 99%. He employs 1.5 million people. Let's give him 15,000 times what everybody else makes. But is that unfair based on those numbers? I also wanted to land with this. I know that Costco managers make anywhere between 100 and 150 grand a year, plus benefits, plus stock options. Costco employees.
Steve, can I just insert this?
Sure.
Costco also has an industry-leading 7% employee match on their 401k.
Absolutely. And for those of you that have the option of a 401k match and you're not putting in at least the amount of the match, you are a financial idiot. If your company offers a match and mine does, you're throwing away 100% investment on your money, tax-free, if you don't put up the match. But back to Costco. Costco managers make anywhere from between 100 and 180 grand a year, plus the match, plus stock options, plus benefits up the gazoo. Their employees are entitled to profit sharing and benefits, and I believe they make like $25-30 an hour. So are the managers not entitled to make more than twice as much as the people that they're responsible for? Oh, they also get bonus for their manager location depending on the profits. I believe people are paid their worth. I do not believe anybody is underpaid or overpaid their worth, because if you're underpaid, go get another job at what you are paid. And Roger, thank you.
Yeah, I want to just add something to the Costco thing because it's an interesting study. They have a culture where they almost exclusively promote from within. It is very difficult to get into their leadership ranks without being an entry-level employee. Almost everybody gets promoted from within, which makes the culture very strong because you don't have to worry about working really hard and some outsider comes in, and because they went to the right school or know the right person, they're going to get that job. There's still going to be some nepotism within the ecosystem of the store itself, but they also have a relationship with their customers. So they treat their employees right. That's number one. The customers, since 1985, they've been offering a hot dog and a soda for $1.50. Now, I don't necessarily know the health impact of what they're doing to their customers, but financially, they've kept that at a loss for a long time, and they're going to continue to do that. In fact, when the former CEO left, he made a joke about if they raised the price of the hot dog and the soda, he would kill the new CEO. And so, like, they are dedicated to the relationship they have with their customers, and they have a culture of taking care of their employees, promoting from within, all of those types of things. And I don't think it's a secret to anyone, but most retail is so adversely affected by online shopping. But if you go to Costco any day of the week, that parking lot is fucking full. I don't care what Costco it is, anywhere in the country. They are doing something right with their employees. They're doing something right for their shareholders. I don't know if you've seen what their stock has done over the years. Everybody benefits because I think Costco is one of the best examples in U.S. history of a company with alignment between, protecting the value for shareholders, protecting the value for employees, protecting their value for customers. I think that's a model that other companies should follow. But if you look at all the companies that don't do that have come and gone over the years, I think it's an excellent example for us to look at of, why it's good to take care of your customers and your employees.
And before Brad goes very quickly, another example is Trader Joe's. Now, I know nothing about the stock end of Trader Joe's, but I know that most employees of Trader Joe's are happy. Most customers like me of Trader Joe's are happy. they do not hire, they do not agree, have a CBA with a union. All of their employees are non-union, and they hire from mostly, like Roger said with Costco, they hire from within. Trader Joe's is another good example.
So I was just going to go back to Moose's point when he was talking about Peerwood, and I wanted to bring up another example. It was Antiocho, whatever. He was the CEO of Blockbuster, and he was the CEO before Keys took over and like basically ran it into the ground. And he brought out a lot of visions. He wanted to put Blockbuster on to compete with Netflix and other online platforms. He wanted to take Blockbuster Music, which was the thing back in the day, and put it on to compete with iTunes, etc., all the other ones that were running out. And he ended up working and buying Viacom, or Viacom buying them in the music industry. This man faced internal pressure from not just the board, but from people within the company, other investors who said it was just a joke because Blockbuster was Blockbuster. This guy saw the writing on the wall. And because of these internal disputes, because of employees beneath him that circumvented him, challenged his authority, challenged his decisions, challenged his vision, the company was already in a decline. And to revitalize it by meeting with the other markets that were emerging, and they pushed back on him so hard, it led to their own demise, where Keys comes in and basically rolled back all of Antiocho's new program, and they just rolled back all those decisions, and then all of a sudden Blockbuster fucking disappeared. All those employees lost a job because they didn't agree with the CEO's decision of where they needed to go for the future. Gives me a prime case in point that employees should never really, I mean, it's hard to say that they should have that much a say in the overall control of the company, because we've watched too many companies over the years, like a Blockbuster, fall because you had the employees revolt against leadership, revolt against vision that they don't understand. They don't look at the landscape the same way. They only look at the narrow focus of their Monday through Friday job and what their paycheck is going to bring home. And I hope in the future that I never have to worry about working with or for a company that follows that they did.
Matrix, drop out Matrix.
Yeah. As Pink Floyd once asked the eternal question, is there anybody out there? Or am I in the Matrix?
No, I hear you. I can't hear you.
I'm here for 5 minutes, and I have a meeting with my boss.
Gotcha. Steve, I was curious, before you run, before you have to go to your meeting, and I don't know, the hourly rate, because all I could find for Starbucks was $15, $16 an hour with $19 for like a shift manager. I was wondering if the $30 an hour rate that you mentioned earlier, does that include stock?
Well, tell you what, I guess I better do some heavy lifting. Don't stop talking, but I'll be back in two.
No worries, but to the question of the room, of the room title, I will say, indubitably, I don't know who I'm guessing, who are the guys, Paul and Rohan, I guess, that started this app. I've read multiple articles, I think, others have too, that they, during the pandemic was their golden, they had the golden goose. They had a captive audience, brilliant idea, didn't really have competition at that time. And I think they were valued at least at $1 billion at one point during the pandemic. The owners passed. They figured it would just look a
possibly go wrong? It can only go up from here. So now we see them kind of doing different things. I think symptoms of a ship in trouble is just throwing paint at the wall. Kind of how they did with changing the hallway dramatically, changing, I think, moderation powers. And of course, the biggest one that we've all seen is this weird monthly subscription, albeit $5, right? God knows we've all spent $5 a month on far worse things. But what are we like? So to me, as a consumer, sure, it's like Moose, you can't complain. We're getting this for free. Sure, to what extent though? Because I intuitively thought that, okay, now they're actually going to start offering perks like being a creep and being anonymous, where you cannot participate in chat, you cannot go on the stage, and the mod cannot kick you out. Now, I know a lot of folks have been freaking out, like, we all saw it in season 1 of Clubhouse. Capital letters, regardless of what your political affiliation was, everyone had in their profile, I do not consent to being recorded. Well, you actually do. The T's and C's on this app, I think, Roger, you were talking about this last night, we've all consented. Like, I couldn't possibly imagine anything I say on Clubhouse to come back, if I'm going to run for a political office, and my opponent is going to mudsling me with, Moots, you were talking about Starbucks salaries, and, we got a clip right here. Like, I don't know why people would really care what you're being, unless you're saying, like, some really far, crazy, extremely racist stuff, or obviously anything related to pedophilia that you might have been involved with. Obviously, right, the obvious things that nobody should be saying out loud in general, let alone on an app. But for me, intuitively, I don't care if you're charging $1 a month or $100 a month. If you are now charging your customers, that means your expectation of your customers and your consumers has gone up, obviously, which means intuitively, on the balance of that, our expectations of the plethora of bugs on this app need to be addressed. I'm sure many of you, I don't think it's just a Droid thing. The fact that you still have like that little indicator that you have new messages, and I know first world problems, but the fact that we still have an indicator of you have new messages when you don't, the fact that you can delete some back channel messages, but others you cannot, and for some reason you can delete some, and for some reason you can unsubscribe from other chats, is absolutely wild to me. I honestly think a high school coder with basic coding and engineer skills could fix these bugs. So I'm going to have to point the problems to those folks. Again, I'm not saying those two individuals, but whomever they have empowered to address these sort of bugs. Apparently, they're not high on their priority, but I absolutely have no problem with people recording me. And now everyone's up in arms, people freaking out. Oh, no, this Anon person is streaming us on YouTube. Great. Who cares? Like, we're in a world now in social media where you have no rights. Like, well, we all click off that little T and C box, but we don't read the 25 pages in microscopic lettering that enables us to use the app. We're just like, oh, let me just use it. So anyway, I don't know if anyone else has a similar frustration of, like, for example, the new message indicator.
Well, Moose, I wanted to get back to you. I'm sorry to interrupt. So, Moose, I was wrong. You were actually correct. I put it in the group chat. It appears that the average wage of Starbucks is $16 to $19 an hour, but if you include all the paid time off, you include the option to be paid for your schooling and education and all the other benefits, they say it averages out to about $30 an hour, but the average pay is $16 to $19. And on the Clubhouse thing, before I go, I didn't hear what was said prior to 15, 20 minutes ago, but it is a documented fact that Clubhouse started with an initial infusion of $100 million. It was a couple of months after that, another $300 million. So they've had a capital infusion of a total of $400 million, and as far as I'm aware to date, they have not taken in one single dollar of gross profit. Yeah, you know what, Marcos, go on mute or I have to drop the thank you. As far as I'm aware, Clubhouse has not declared one single dollar of gross profit, but they did start out with $100 million and then another $300 million for a total of $400 million. Business has been running 5 years now. Just a question, how do you run a business for 5 years and not have a single dollar of gross profit? Forget about net profit, gross profit. And thanks, you guys. It's been fun.
Thank you. Well, I'll say this. I don't think Clubhouse is ruined. I like Clubhouse. And I'll also say, present company excluded, but the biggest people complaining about who ruined Clubhouse are the fucking biggest grifters on this app. And I'll stand on my square on that shit.
I think it's interesting. Clearly, when the money runs out, Clubhouse will be gone, or they'll get bought by someone else that may or may not decide to keep it going. You can't keep it going forever if you're not making money. That's first and foremost. As far as is it a dying app? The numbers suggest that it's. Depending on the snapshot that you want to start from, is it a dying app? Absolutely. The peak of April 2021 was a long time ago. And so maybe if you started with like a starting point of January 2025, maybe they're picking up a little bit of momentum, but they're nowhere near where they were in the early part of 2021. And it's funny that Paul and Rowan have said it themselves, which is an interesting thing to say. Our biggest problem was we grew too fast.
I remember when they said that, yeah.
Yeah, and now, that wasn't their biggest problem. Their biggest problem was the growth that they had was caused by people being on lockdown, and they had no plan to continue the momentum. Their lack of creativity on how to drive people to the app without a pandemic happening, that is on them. Their inability to market or incentivize the people to share. The other thing that I think that people don't talk about enough is that those of us that have been on this app, we should be, in theory, the biggest advocates for telling people about this app, but almost everybody that I know on this app, they don't want their family and friends on here for multiple reasons. This app can be crazy, and the content that we get into, these conversations that can be contentious, and people are saying outlandish shit, they don't want their family and friends. They certainly don't want their coworkers. They don't want them anywhere near this app. And there's no real way that I can think of cleaning that up, because the things that we all enjoy about it is the unfettered nature of these conversations. And I don't think the rest of the world is ready for it. I think that we're these we have this weird obsession with these unfettered conversations. Most people would be too shocked; they wouldn't be able to handle it, and that's why a lot of people left. And it's why celebrities will never come back. When you have guys that comedians should be quick-witted and be able to respond to people and deal with hecklers and what. Kevin Hart, one of the most successful comedians of all time, he got packed up on a Clubhouse stage. And I think that's a world that celebrities are not ready for. And if you were the manager of a celebrity and you knew stories about what happened to Brett Weinstein, what happened to Kevin Hart, you would probably demand of the people that you manage, don't go anywhere near that fucking app. And so they're not going to get the celebrities. We're not going to invite our family and friends. So I don't really know what their growth strategy is. I really don't know what they're doing. Go for it.
If you were the executive producer of a TV show it had 10 million viewers a week. Would you consider that successful?
It depends. If it had 50 million the prior week, no.
Okay, but if it just only has 10 million, because that's advertising money, and even though Clubhouse doesn't advertise, this guy still has 10 million active users a week worldwide. Here's the thing, we've been pigeonholed into these corners of Clubhouse, but like if you look through your algorithm, you look through your streets, right? Bro, there is Persian rooms that have 5,000-6,000 people in it at a time.
Are you gonna go in there and learn Persian?
Not at all. But what I will do is we should try to expand our audience and see and tap into the 10 million active users, which is just my opinion.
Well, the biggest growth on this app, and it's started a couple of years ago, was when it went live in India. If you think about what this app could allow you to do in terms of, I mean, you can have, you can get rid of your fucking phone bill if you really wanted. You can certainly get rid of apps that, you know, like Zoom and things like that, where you do conferencing. You can set up rooms to have these conversations. There's a lot of use cases that you could do. And in India, I think they are doing it. But I don't think for American audiences, I think the peak will never get back to the level that it was. I think 2021, that was the apex for the American audience. And I don't know about you, but I wouldn't know what to do going into an Indian room other than maybe ask them for a recipe for lamb vindaloo. I mean, like, I just don't know.
I just want to say this. When I first came on the app, there were significantly more Europeans than I do now. I find it rare, like outside of the one crazy from guy, you never hear of anybody from France. You really don't hear that, and you'll get some English people on here, but it used to be an Irish contingent and a Scottish one, but you don't really hear the Germans, except for on occasion run some weird room. And then you've got, you know, none of the other, like no real Spanish users on here. They're usually Hispanic in nature, mostly Hispanic American. And so maybe some Caribbean, but you don't really have the global expansion that it could offer. The Indians were the biggest boom as far as an outside America presence, and even they have, I would say, what you'd say, Roger, have gone down to like an eighth of what they were originally. They're not as big as they used to be, and I think, you know, it's just going to the fact that like some of the things, like what Roger said, is it's too, you have to be tough to be on here. You have to be able to withstand it. Be called every name in the book. Have somebody say that they're, you know, going to dig your wife up and fuck her. You've got to have all of that shit. I mean, you've got to be able to take it and then just like be able to dish it right back. You've got to be quick with it, and you just have to be strong. And I think what we overestimated was the strength of a lot of people that are came to Clubhouse. All these stars that were there, they just didn't have the ability to stand up to a direct verbal confrontation.
That's true. You have to have a thick skin for Clubhouse, and you know, I don't know, Brad. Like regarding the celebrity thing, I think at the end of the day, as far as anyone who doesn't want it, you know, when I was going on my rant about like, well, who cares if this room right now that we're in is being streamed on YouTube. But for a celebrity, especially if they have a recognizable voice, I mean, honestly, the only celebrity I still see once in a while, is the guy who played. I don't know anyone familiar with The Wire. The guy who played the lawyer for one or two of the gangsters.
What about Justine
I think it's also just perhaps like the toxic masculinity that has.
Oh, come on! I know this.
Unfortunately.
Well, actually, I wasn't done yet. I just wanted real quick if I could finish.
Don't kick her, please. Whoever.
Yeah, let's have some entertainment. But so to JP, to your point, I don't deny that there's 10 million users worldwide. That's traffic. If they're going to try to finally dump this app once and for all and find some sucker. I mean, a spirited entrepreneur wants to turn this thing around. But like Dwight put in the chat, I see like 15, 20 rooms in my hallways on the regular, and not just like the people that I'm following were sort of topics that I like. Like, for example, I don't follow anyone in Biblical Smoke. I've never, maybe I made the mistake of going to one of their rooms to see what is the attraction. How are these guys getting 700-900 people on the regular? Like, if Biblical Smoke has like 200 people, I'm like, wow, slow day. So, I see a lot of the religious rooms that attract, a good number of audiences, if you will. And the other ones are like these Aristotelian political rooms that have like a few hundred on the regular. But again, I don't understand how they can't just fix the basic bugs. I know it's like first world problems. Am I being too high maintenance to say, Clubhouse, Rohan, Paul, please have your engineers just spend an extra hour and just fix that bug where we have, it indicates you have messages when you don't, or is that just another shiny thing they want to keep engaging with us?
Bruce, let me just say something. 2 seconds. Victoria, you can give your toxic femininity all you want. I don't really give a shit. But, so I say, breaking news, Kamala Harris has said she will not be running for California governor, which says to me she's going to be running in 2028. Okay, Victoria, let's hear.
Wait, hold on before Victoria goes. Hold on before Victoria goes. I just pulled up some stats for the month of June. From June 1st through June 22nd of 2025, 80% of global Clubhouse downloads for that period came from India. Now, if that's consistent across the board, that's crazy. They're by far the largest, and everybody knows that. But that's 80% from June 1st to June 22nd. That's a 3-week period where 80% of the downloads came from India. This app may fucking thrive after all, but it's not gonna be in America.
Do they have a reason for that? Do they have a reason for that?
Oh, hold on, Sam, we gotta go to Victoria, otherwise she'll cry the whole room.
Just trying to follow up on what...
Yeah, really quick, Victoria, I appreciate your patience. Just a quick question for anyone in the room. Yeah.
Please let the lady go.
She's been waiting, fair enough. Go ahead, ladies first, go ahead, go for it.
Victoria, do you want to cry?
No, I think if we look at who ruined Clubhouse, like you're already leading with a preposition, like you're the premise of something being ruined. I personally found many rooms with people from different European countries, different Asian countries, and I had travel rooms, Chinese idiom rooms.
We get it. American men are bad. We're bad people.
But I think unfortunately, what we're seeing is a reflection of sometimes having too many people in a party doesn't make the party better. And I think where Clubhouse started to decline was unfortunately not making it invite only, not making people responsible. People can just create profiles like myself, for example, because you no longer want the attachment to the other followers, for example.
So,
hold on.
Go ahead, sir. Yeah, go ahead.
Bismal, I have a question for you, and I just need some clarification, and I need your own words on this. Did you state that you worked as a presidential advisor across 3 administrations?
No,
She said she briefed the president, 3 different presidents in the Situation Room.
No, also, Biden was vice president at the time, so it doesn't count. But
your words the other night was 3 different administrations. You were in the Situation Room and you were briefing them, and then you didn't explain what you briefed them on, which is fine. But I think what Brad's asking is for you to acknowledge that, because it was when he learned of that.
Sorry if that irks you, Brad. Not trying to impress, just stating a fact.
Respectfully, Digital, I think he's just asking for you to confirm the claim. I don't think anyone suggested that they were somehow intimidated.
Yeah, I'm definitely not intimidated by it. I just wanted you to verify with your own words the statements that you made in an earlier room that people had advised me to make. And I'm just giving you your fair chance to provide any clarification, any nuance you wanted to say in regards.
And I already responded.
I can claim to have met 3 U.S. presidents, shook their hands. Have you ever been in the Situation Room?
Depends on the situation.
No, I've never been in the Situation Room, but I met 3 presidents. I met George Bush Sr. shook his hand, Bush Jr., and Bill Clinton.
Did you wash your hands after you shook Clinton's hand?
No, I did not. No, I did not. That's funny.
What I wanted to ask earlier real quick was to the point of usership on this app. I mean, I don't know, I think this whole Victoria was done, but when you add, like, so to for the folks that everybody here interacts with off the app in air quotes, real life, on the average, when you ask them, even during the pandemic, when they had the captive audience, when they were peaking, if you've asked, hey, I was on this app Clubhouse, pandemic stuff and all that stuff and political stuff, and if you try to describe what the app is, what would you say on the average, 1 out of 10, 7 out of 10, 3 out of 10, 8 out of 10 of your friends or coworkers, people you just talked to, actually even heard of the app, let alone used it?
0 out of 10.
Exactly.
I'd love to hear more from Dismal about the toxic masculinity that killed this app. Victoria, can you tell us about the toxic masculinity that killed this app? Is that possible?
I think it's like you're not bringing on new people, obviously. Like,
Who's you?
Who's
you?
The male voices in this room, you're the definition of toxic masculinity.
So let me ask you a question. Hold on, if I ask I'm gonna ask you a question. If we had 25 people in the room, they've never been on Clubhouse, who do you think they're gonna listen to before you or me? They're definitely not gonna listen to you and your batshit crazy theories and you being in the Situation Room 3 times. But I'll open the room and I'll get all 25 of those people to come in. So I guess masculinity's not that toxic, maybe just to you.
Sorry, me being in the Situation Room 3 times, I didn't say that. I've been in the Situation Room many times. What are you trying to prove?
I don't have to prove anything. Every time you speak, you prove it yourself.
What were you working for the federal government? What was your role?
This is like the problem that I literally highlighted, and you're proving it. It's so brilliant. I don't even have to like share anything more. It's
Victoria, I think it's fair to be critical of the way like people may or may not behave on a stage. That's absolutely true, and I would never take that away from you. And I think that even on the stage right now, we could both probably point to the same things and be critical of them. But I don't know if you can attribute that behavior specifically to it being male, even if it was males. So I don't think that you are proving your claim about toxic masculinity by using the current station as an example. I'm not saying that you couldn't. I think it's more embarrassing to make the claim in the first place. So I definitely don't think that just because the man doesn't become like
I'm not going to highlight
Victoria, I'm not sure. I don't know what's wrong with you, but you can never let people finish, specifically me. You are going to let me finish, but I want to give you the opportunity to actually defend your statement if you want to, because I don't think it's a good reply to say that this stage is proving you true.
So I used to host rooms and discussions, and the reason that I stopped is because there are a lot of these like toxic male characters that showed up. So if we're looking at why did this app decline, I think it's because there wasn't proper or appropriate gatekeeping. So we ended up with a bunch of trolls, and trolls unfortunately are not like, obviously not going to attract more people to the app. Nobody wants to be on here anymore.
Yeah, a lot of people have said this about trolls. I don't think trolls are inherently male. That I would just quibble with you attributing this to men somehow, unless you're trying to say that some kind of internalized toxic masculinity is exhibited by trolls, regardless of your gender.
May I was here in the beginning of Clubhouse, and so was Victoria and Brad and Mojo. We were the invites, and it was definitely different when it was invite. And when they started opening it up to non-invites, it just became, it kind of got ghetto a bit. Some rooms and some places, you just had really low IQ people. It was a whole different vibe before they opened it up. And I can understand why they wanted to open it up, to increase their numbers that were on the app, so that maybe they want to sell it or so. I mean, they had a substantial financial offer for this app, and they turned it down. I'm sure they regret it now.
Well, hold on. Everyone talks about the offer that they got. I've heard about the valuation of $4 billion, but there's no proof that there was ever an offer made, unless you can correct.
Oh, you know what? You got a point there. Yes. No, I stand corrected. There was a valuation. I'm not sure about the specifics of a legitimate offer, but you are right. There was a huge valuation for this.
That's go ahead, JB.
I just need to publicly apologize. Brad, I want to apologize to you publicly for ever fighting with you over this woman. She's what killed this app. The toxic femininity on this app. When you can't even ask a simple question without any bass in your voice, and they turn around and say, see, you're proving my point. Brad, man to man, I sincerely apologize to you.
Takes a big man to apologize, and I was just gonna say, go ahead, Mojo. I think you were gonna say.
I was just gonna quickly say, it's been a long time, but Victoria, do you remember when you and I hosted a room?
Yes, yeah, I do, actually.
Yeah, and it sounds like you're trying now to lump me into this category of like these toxic men. When did you turn on me?
Well, she's still muted. So I was going to say real quick. So first off, yes, you're correct, Roger. When I said earlier about the valuation, I didn't say I had an offer, but yeah, they were valued at billions and billions. And I just want to say, I think Kelly pretty much summed it up well regarding her. I have to say, somewhat outlandish claim. And I know Victoria knows me from other rooms. She knows I'm on the left. But to come in here and say, well, all these male voices are the reason why this app is down, you can't say with a straight face that there aren't women on this app that come to fight, that come for the accident, that come for the train wreck, that come for the content. I think the toxicity is actually equal on this app. Maybe not out there in the real world, but it most certainly is on this app. You cannot just to pigeonhole that it's only the male, and then there is
I think that's actually a fair observation. But there used to be I remember logging in on this app and seeing 3 different rooms at the same time that I wanted to be able to listen to. It's About Time or Science Society or other rooms. These were all intelligent people that were contributing, and the only content that we see now is how can you burn somebody, how can you troll somebody, even just
there's a room right
this
now.
room, for example.
There's a room right now that's run by women. It's for RPO, research purposes only. They have some male mods, but I believe it was founded by women. And literally the room title is, would you rather be a child predator or queer? That's not really a kumbaya
What I basically said is basically the gatekeeping, not having invitation only to the app. You end up with a declined population of people.
Well, Victoria, you've already made this point. So even though you want to now back away from the claim that you didn't actually get to finish because nobody really wanted to hear it because everyone was presuming it would be bullshit, But you did say toxic masculinity. This is a claim that you made. You did not expand upon it. I tried to give you the opportunity to do it. But I understand and appreciate that it is an inconvenient truth at this point, but we do not need to then rehash something else that you said to pretend like you never said that. It's fine. Like, I think.
Johnny, I think you're an amazing son.
Totally appropriate thing for you to agree that moves.
Johnny, keep cutting out, hon.
I think she was just trying to say that I agree that there's also women that are equally toxic.
You don't even take more time to repeat yourself to distance yourself from what you said, like everyone remembers. So let's just move on to others that want to speak unless you.
Well, I like to just say one final thing before we move on. I find it funny that you complain about this room, other rooms, but yet you're in there consistently. There is nothing stopping you other than that nobody will show up from opening your own rooms. That's just my opinion.
Hey, GB, I heard your there was no worries. I never really had any concerns over it. I don't even remember the arguments, to be honest with you. That's how short term those things last in my head. It's there's no need to apologize.
Look, I'll be the outlier here. As much as I can offer pushback at times to Victoria, I actually enjoy having her in the room.
I just wanted to hear the clarification on the comments, Roger. That was all. I was just intrigued by that. Not that I've ever been in the Situation Room, but I will say that I find it dubious that someone of Victoria's ilk would be in the Situation Room. It just does not strike me as probable.
Well, that wasn't even the most interesting part of her submission the other night. The most interesting part was the way that she was made to feel by Donald Trump. Donald Trump, was it a look or was it a comment? Victoria? Maybe she doesn't know she's on mute.
Hey, Brad, I have a question for you. What do you think's more believable? Joe B being in the NSA or Dismal being in the Situation Room for 3 presidents?
I'll go with Joe B.
What about Edmund's claim that he works for the IRS?
I actually might believe that one. He is kind of crazy. Those IRS people aren't, they're not screwed down too tight. You know what I mean?
I have to believe him when it's the IRS. I mean, he is crazy, like we all know, but he's no dummy. He's quite smart.
I actually want to help him with his political campaign.
Not again, because you and I have helped. What we are now on? What would this be? 5, 6 people so far that we've helped. They donated and offered assistance.
Well, they don't really listen to us, Brad. They just they want us to do rooms with them, but they don't really listen to what we.
Shit, I helped raise money on one of them. I put them in touch with people. Gerard wrote fucking things. I mean, we did whole speeches. No. I'm not helping anybody that's running for office. And one of the fuckers used to be on Clubhouse and then got elected. And it turns out he was a whole different person. He had as many personalities as Victoria.
How was Gerard doing?
He's doing good. He's doing his thing. He's actually getting more and more in depth with the RNC and political circles, so he's moving up the chain and he's doing his thing. He's rocking it out.
Do you guys remember when we did the fundraiser for the guy that was running for U.S. Senate in New York, Tom Queter, and he needed he had a wheelchair that he's bound by, and he needed a new one. His insurance wasn't paying for it. And within about an hour, we raised $11,000 for him to get a new wheelchair. That was one of the more interesting rooms.
And we also helped Tom Slocum. You know, not that I really personally liked him, but we helped him massively in ways. I mean, not that you're going to win against a guy who's got a 98% approval rating for his district, but I mean, we still offered the opportunity and the assistance, and we thought it was, you know, a long shot to win, but we gave it our all. I'm not helping anybody that's running for office.
If you could bring 3 people back to the app, who would your 3 people be?
Keanu Reeves, and Keanu Reeves.
I'd bring KB back because I thought her rooms were hysterical when Clubhouse Season 1 first started. I'd probably bring Chris Ruby back. She was entertaining to a point, and it wasn't that you wanted to listen to her, she just seemed to have a really strong network to bring people on. And then I'd bring the Net Geo individuals, the reporters and the investigators that work for the various Net Geo research foundations. They used to hold rooms, and they were fucking amazing. They were brilliant, filled with people doing a variety of things.
Who was Mojo? You remember that guy from season 1, early 20s? I mean, his New York accent makes JB's accent like sound like Midwest. I think his name was Alex. He had big rooms. He would really push the envelope.
Alex, New York?
Oh yeah, Alex, New York. Is he still on here?
No, he hasn't been on here in a while. And I will say this, he was easily one of the most gifted people on this app when it came to understanding what buttons to press, how to get a room going. If the room didn't start fast enough, he would just end it and start a new one. Alex New York, I've had private conversations with him. That dude needs a podcast. That dude is quicker witted than probably anybody on this app.
I think Tyler's like tech news around the world, Paul's It's About Time, and there is a guy who led a lot of philosophy of language rooms, warranting. Those are the people I would bring back.
All the fun people.
They had, like, It's About Time on Saturday morning had many people listen.
Do you see how annoying it is when you get cut off before you're finished, Victoria? Or excuse me, Dismal. That's why I muted you before you were finished to make that point. So please just keep that in mind moving.
If I could bring back 3 people, I would bring back. I think Ned was the best at what he did. I think the way that he moderated a room, where he was able to get the crazies in, but keep them in check, and but also bring, like, you know, highly intellectual people to the table. I think he would be a value add if he were back. Other people that I would want to see come back to the app that I think would be like a huge value would be something like, I don't know if you guys would even remember some of these people. Well, Justin Higgins, as much as I thought he was kind of like a twerp, he was very good at getting people. He was getting sitting congressmen, former directors of the CIA. He got a lot of interesting people onto this app to interview them. I didn't like the structure that he had, but the structure that he had was the only way those people were going to agree to come on the stage. And unfortunately, what he did was he quickly abandoned his interest in this app because he got delusions of grandeur. So Justin Higgins and Ned, I think those would be the top 2 that would bring value back. And then, and then, believe it or not, I think even just bringing back Hunter Shackelford. I think Hunter was such a character.
Who is Ned, and what room did he lead that I perhaps missed?
Ned used to do rooms all the time. Kelly, like, how would you describe Ned?
Yeah, Ned generally had pretty open discussions with really. He would have interesting people, like a variety, not some sort of set panel, but a lot of the people that people who have been on here for a while would have considered, like, I guess, quote unquote heavy hitters, things like that. Ned was kind of in community with them, and so they would spend time in his rooms, and generally the topics would be current events, like often steered towards politics, but also often steered toward I hate to say like culture war issues, but like that's what they're often reduced to now. But this was years ago, before people were having these kinds of discussions in the same ways. And Ned managed to keep the conversation really efficient, even with the quote unquote heavy hitters. He had a way of managing the stage to keep them from dominating, being boring, etc., and also including randos that he didn't know. And it was interesting. Like, I don't know, he would explore these topics and people had fun stuff to say. And randomly, Lex Friedman, Eric Weinstein would come in and actually speak for 5-10 minutes or even get in conversation. So a lot of people would like hope that would happen, but even if it didn't, they were accessible conversations about things people talked about but weren't really discussing in like the public conversation yet. And this,
I really appreciated. Do you guys remember Cami? She would have rooms that she hosted, basically making tech news accessible to average people. Scientific and basically STEM related topics. Nobody knows what I'm referring to?
I mean, that's Cami may have done that, but I think what most people probably remember her for is kind of just being like the silent mod. It was like always a mod on almost every stage.